You've been everybody else's first project, but when are you going to start being your own? I'm Nisha D, and this is I Am My First Project, where we have real and uncomfortable conversations about why you're constantly staying stuck. As a resilience coach, I'm here to show you that most people prefer to be stuck in familiar bondage than unstuck in unfamiliar growth. And if that triggers you, keep watching. So if you're tired of staying stuck, I have a 4-week program that's opening up in January 2026. You get to work with me and we get to build the life that you want to build. Click the link below and let's get to getting unstuck. I'm Nisha D, founder of a coaching business called Selfishly Growing to help women after grief, after loss, and after any setback that you just could not get yourself up from. If you tried therapy before, then this is the show for you. Because sometimes it's not about therapy. It's about getting past therapy. Therapy sometimes just allows you to talk about the problem and vent about the problem. But coaching is a one-by-one step of somebody holding your hand and guiding you through it, but somebody that's also been through the journey. I've walked it, I've experienced it, and now I can share my story with you. This show's for you if you've done therapy before and it didn't seem like it helped you. It had you stuck in the same spot. The show is also for you if you're a person that looks good on paper. You have the careers, you have the goal, you have the family, but deep inside, you're actually still really stuck. The show is also for you if you know that every setback that you've experienced and your testimony has a bigger meaning to it, that there's a comeback from this. There's a reason that God even allowed you to go through it. And lastly, this story is for you if you are ready to be the co-author of your story. If you're tired of letting the church or religion or people or friends or community or even society continue to dictate who you are and to continue to drive who you are as a person. I created Selfishly Growing because I lived the journey myself. Started at a really young age, and I actually had to understand that there was a reason behind it. Kind of seeing the fact that sometimes we go through things at a very early age and God accelerates our path, but it's not always for a bad thing. It's meant to set us up for our come up. So I know what it feels like to fail and to have a fallback and not be able to pull back from it. But I also know the resiliency and the beautifulness of being able to create a program for other people on how I did continue when life gave me every reason to stop. But first, let me tell you my story, how my mess became a message and how my setback became a come up. A little bit about me. Y'all, I have my notes. Just bear with me. Let me just tell you the story about who I am. But it's a lot. So 10-year-old me, my dad got sick, and he was my entire world. Unfortunately, I wasn't old enough to be able to go in the hospital. So that was detrimental for me. The person that I had the best relationship in the world with was now arms width away, and I had no access. On top of that, the isolation. I grew up in a predominantly white Caucasian area where we were only 4 of Black families around. I wasn't really the type to fit in per se. I was a tomboy. My hair didn't look like everybody else's, and it was super isolating. My brother, he's 6 years older than me, and my sister, she's 12 years older than me. We had an estranged relationship, so I was really the single child growing up in this predominantly white neighborhood. I wanted to fit in so bad. I wanted to be accepted. That didn't always happen. But I did have friends, so that was great. I had a dark perspective though. My brother's coldness for 6 years was the first interaction of the first estranged relationship that I'm gonna have with men. And as much as I thought it didn't shape me, it molded a lot of my relationships with men as I got older. Mom goes cold, she's drowning in debt, her husband's sick, and she doesn't really know what to do. We had just moved from California, they were making $250,000 a year to now on one income, and everything was on her. What could I expect her to know at that age that I've now learned now that I'm older? I have so much more grace for her. So then I started getting depressed at around 10 to 16. Between suicide and cutting was a dark time for me. But unfortunately, I went to a church who shamed me for that, who called me selfish, who tore me apart for it, who said I didn't care about anybody. And you can only imagine being 10, 12, and 13, and your father is dying, your mother's drowning, your brother's cold, and you are being told that you're selfish. You start to question what is the purpose of your existence and question why God would allow this to be. I'm just glad that I found out later on that that was not the same God that I serve today. And then we get into the message that I learned. Your pain doesn't matter, and it's perfectly fine to be alone, is what I learned as a child. It wasn't the best lesson, but due to isolation, due to rejection, due to shame, and due to all these people not being able to help me, I kind of got stuck in my own world. I kind of got stuck trying to figure it out and make a way. And unfortunately, if you don't raise your child, the world will. And the world taught me some painful lessons. So what's the point? This is where I learned that love was something you earned, not something you receive. I became everyone else's project because everyone else made me theirs. I wanted to be seen, and the best way to be seen was to become valuable. So then it starts the 10 years of relationships, because relationships became my safety net. I was able to have somebody that chose to love me versus the family and the church family that I thought had to love me. My first relationship was at 15. We're going to call him, I'm a huge Marvel fan, so we're going to call him Loki. He was a cheater. And yeah, he started off. Not too much to say about him, just the fact that he was a cheater. So that's my first experience of relationships. Cheaters. But then we're going to get into the fact that 3 engagements later, I've been proposed to 3 times. People weaponized love because they knew that I desired it, to the point where it caused some very sticky situations, to the part where I got married after meeting somebody for 90 days. Crazy work. So marriage at 21, divorce at 25, church married me off in 90 days after meeting somebody that came to the church, even though I had been there since I was 15. It's kind of ironic how they can do that. They didn't check the qualities of this person, but yet they said they loved me and they cared about me. It was an invaluable indifference, and sometimes to this day, I still don't understand why they allowed that to happen. But we all learn. It's a pivoting. It's a part of the journey. And now that now that I was able to go through that, I'm able to help people tell their story and take power back in the story. Although it hurt, I thought it was difficult, it was something to overcome. So the realization was that my safety came from being in a partnership, even if the partnership wasn't always safe. It was the fact that I had somebody, the fact that somebody was stuck to me, obligated to me, and it was ownership in a way. I thought that I finally had a voice. I thought that I finally had somebody that chose me. In reality, though, that doesn't always look how we think it's gonna look. Some love is tainted, and just because they have a definition of love doesn't mean that it looks like your type of love. Doesn't mean that it feels like your type of love. Sometimes I've learned that for some people, love means pain. And for a very long time, I thought everybody's love had to come with pain. And if it didn't come with pain, it wasn't something that I was able to receive. And the relationships controlled everything for me. They controlled how I viewed men. They controlled my relationship with sex. They controlled being good, being perfect. Everything was centered around marriage and all the doing of the routines and the work. Because I had to check off every box to be perfect, because love had to be earned. I wasn't choosing relationships because I loved people. I was choosing relationships because I was terrified of being alone. Because if I stopped doing, what would I be? Who would I be? And what was my purpose outside of being for everybody else? Because everybody else had to be my project. Unfortunately, we can all say that religion, my upbringing, and relationships all cultivated who I am. In a bad way, yes, we could say that it's a negative, but in a good way, it's a testimony, and it's my story. And that's the beautiful thing about being the co-author of your story. You take back the power. And one thing that I always tell my clients is, you can either be the victim or the victor, but you don't get to be both. And in this story, I chose that I'm the victor. I've overcame so much of this, and at one point I did have a mindset that I was the victim. But that doesn't really work here anymore. It doesn't work because I finally get to tell my story from my perspective. It doesn't work anymore because I coach people through what I went through. It doesn't work anymore because people ask me about what I went through and the advice that I had. It's more about power to me now, and the fact that I get to tell my story and be the co-author. Not my ex-husband, not the relationships, not the cult religions, not the friends, not the family. I get to. And because I'm the co-author and God's the ultimate author, it's such a beautiful thing to have a relationship with him. So then we go into the religious performance and people pleasing. I had this really bad. You have to remember that for me, I went to a cult church at 10 and 15, 2 different experiences. The first one was more noticeable, but I was young, didn't know any better. Small 10 people church. We had to be there no matter what. Dad never allowed us to miss it. It was a problem. Would drive an hour to come get me from my friend's house to make sure I attended the service. On top of that, the fact that they shamed me for being depressed as a child doesn't help it. But then we get into the older church, the one that allowed me to get married after 90 days of meeting somebody, but also the first lady who took a liking to me, exceptionally unique. A lot of people don't talk about spiritual grooming, and you'll see that more in episode 2. But it's something to be wary of, especially when you're a mad, angry, depressed teenager and somebody can take a liking to all of the power, all of the performances, or all of the accolades that they see that you have. And that's exactly what she did. She became the front driver in a lot of my decisions from 15 to 21. From the simple decision of what college I went to the decision of the type of people I dated, to me breaking up with certain people, to the type of parties or events I hung around, to even the person that I married. It's kind of crazy to think of now that somebody had that much power. But when they call themselves a spiritual mother, you would never think that their intentions are to hurt you. This love didn't hurt like the others. This love took advantage of everything about me, though, because in one reality, I thought she loved me. So when I talk about love, for me, it wasn't always relationships. Sometimes it was mentors. Sometimes it was friendships. Sometimes it was family. Didn't really just stick to one area for me. But for her, she was a spiritual type of love. The one that seemed like she cared so much about me and asked about all my concerns. But deeply, deeply inside, it was always a possessiveness around it to where nothing moved outside of her. So what I learned from her was love is controlling, and love doesn't have any type of boundaries, and love doesn't come with apologies, because not one time did she ever apologize for anything she ever did. So the only option for me was to be perfect. The only thing that church taught me a lot of times was the power of shame. One of the things that sucks growing up in a church like that is you are on a pedestal. I remember so many times she had me sit in the front of the church, and anytime I messed up or went out or drank or did anything that was unfavorable, I remember being publicly shamed. I remember being called to the front. I remember a sermon being about me. I remember my name being called. Or if I was scheduled to praise dance, I was no longer allowed to praise dance. I learned that everything of perfection came with some type of rejection if you fell out of line of it. I learned that I couldn't color out the lines. I learned that I had to have it all together. And that's kind of hard being 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20, trying to go into the world and figure yourself out and learn who you are. But you have somebody telling you that that's not really possible. It's not really room for that here because you have to be perfect and the standard is different from you. I was performing perfection for God, for the church, for my community. I was everyone's project, everyone's expectation, and I was suffocating. So after divorce happened at 25, it was the breaking point, but it wasn't the breakthrough for me. I got into a relationship immediately after, we're going to say, with somebody that wasn't that safe for me, a 41-year-old man that took advantage of a very sticky situation. This relationship taught me a lot about how control and manipulation works, unfortunately. Somebody taking advantage of somebody that they see in a vulnerable situation for their own outcome and their own good. It wasn't the most favorable situation for me, but I learned a lot. Unfortunately, he became my stalker for a while, and I was able to get out of that situation, but I learned that everybody doesn't always have good intentions. And that was really hard for me to understand because, in my opinion, I always have good intentions. That's kind of what it comes with having a big heart. The last relationship was probably one of the healthiest relationships that I got into after that situation because, again, Nisha can never stay out of relationships. And that was a relationship that was the breakthrough. That was the one that ended abruptly, but taught me so much. That was the first time that I had no choice but to stand on my feet after a breakup and realize, Nisha, you've never been single before. You've never been without a partner before, and you've never just had to be with you. Maybe this is the time that you do that. So that couch conversation that I had this moment on was the first time that I came face to face with my reality. The first time that I came face to face with my story and realized that this was not going to be like another situation. I feel like something inside of me knew that this cycle was cracking. The cycle of being in relationships over and over and fluidly going through it. And it felt so good to see that. I'm now realizing that the pattern was exposed. I've been earning everyone else's love by doing. I financially supported best friends. I was always trying to be the perfect wife. I always overpoured into every relationship that I had. And now it was enough. Now was the first time that I had to sit with me and realize, what about you now? Now that everybody else is gone and their life continues without you, what do you want to do with your life? And that is when I officially started to create my program, Mind Rescue. So the truth is, I had to become my first project. The fear was I didn't really know where to start, and I didn't really know what that would look like. I didn't know if I had all the tools, the skills, or the capabilities. And it was nerve-wracking to believe that I had to stand on me. I had nobody else to fall on. I had nobody else connected to me. And that was actually the first time in my life that I saw that perspective of just me in the mirror. It was always me attached to somebody. I could always hide behind my last name. I could always hide behind a partnership. But this was the first time that I couldn't do that. I decided that for the first time in my life, I was going to choose me. And I was going to choose me no matter what. I was going to choose me like I chose everybody else in the world because everybody else has disappointed me before. But Nisha, have you ever given yourself the chance to actually show up for you? And it was always no. It was always somebody else getting in the way. So then the work finally begins. And let me tell you, it wasn't pretty. Everybody thinks that trying to be a better person, self-development, growing is easy, and it's not. Self-care is so easy when you're thinking about hair and makeup and all the outer appearance. And that was always good for me. I always looked the part. I always looked put together. But inside, there was so much about me that I didn't like. So much about me that I didn't want to sit with. And one thing I had to do was taste, smell, eat, drink all of who I was as a person. And I had to accept where I was. And that was probably the hardest 4 months of my life of just sitting with who I was as a person. God had me in isolation. He didn't have me connected to people. I didn't have community. I wasn't outside. I literally would come home and I would just sit in my apartment. It was me and my dog and my 4 walls, my prayer closet, my journal, and long walks with God. And I thought this was the hardest part of the journey, but it was only the beginning. God gave me undivided attention to be able to cultivate a moment of me even understanding who I was. And in that time, I got to discover who I was. I found it selfishly growing because I knew that there were thousands of women in this world who needed a safe space and a place to even say that their comeback was coming, that their setback, their mess could be a message, that needed some type of pull to know that this wasn't the end goal for them. That was why I created Selfishly Growing, with people like you in mind. It wasn't just about me, because I've never been a selfish person. I've always thought about other people. But I had to go through the program myself to be able to even cultivate something for somebody else. And that's why God gives us testimony, and there's power in the testimony. The business is called Selfishly Growing because that's exactly what you have to do. You have to be selfish to be able to grow. Not in a way that harms others, but in a way that finally honors yourself. You spent so many years selfishly shrinking for other people and letting everybody else be comfortable that it's finally your chance to be selfish and start growing. Through Selfishly Growing, I teach women Mind Rescue. It's a poverty mindset that we have. We start with the mindset and the environment, and that's how we pull you in. That's how I take a group of women that I select to work with after an application and an interview, and we work together in a group setting every week for 4 weeks to cultivate a space for you, to bring you back to life, to let you know that there's so many things outside of your limitation. So many times that we limit ourselves. If you think of the story of Adam and Eve, there was always a lack that they saw, even though they had 99% of the garden. And that's how we operate in our life. So what I do is I come in with the programs and show you where you are, show you where you want to be, and show you where you can be, and surpass so many things that you've gave yourself on limiting beliefs. The stories you tell, the failure you have, the stories you tell yourself about failure, your worthiness, and your capability, we go step by step to cultivate what is your new reality. The beliefs you inherited from your family, your ex, your past, or even the ones that you created for yourself can now be reshaped to something else. Most people say they want change, but they don't want to do the work to get uncomfortable to do it. Change doesn't come from comfort. It comes from the uncomfortability. Insanity is the same thing of doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. You can't come into the program thinking that you'll get a different result by showing up with the same mindset, the same environment, and the same limitations and capabilities. So that is where I come in to help shape you into the person that you want to be, because your mess has a message and you're the co-author of your story, so you get to cultivate what it's supposed to be. You don't let your past define it. You don't let the people around you define it. You get to take your story and have the power with it. So let's rewrite that story together. So setting the stage for the season, we have 8 exciting episodes. This is number 1, the origin story of me. Y'all, I'm looking at my notes again. Episode 2, when God feels distant. We're going to talk about the cult churches, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that spiritual grooming and how religious trauma affects people. I know a lot of people can relate to that. Episode 3 is going to be love lessons from a serial relationship girl. 6 relationships, 3 engagement rings, and codependency patterns, and what each relationship taught me about earning versus receiving love. Episode 4 is going to be the loneliness freedom. First time being single as an adult after 10 years of relationships. Number 5 is going to be when your family is your first mean girl. We're going to talk about how sometimes your first experience of a mean girl might be your aunt, your mom, your family, your friends, the people that grew up with you that say that they value you so much. You might not be as nice as you think you are, but that might also be because how you were raised. Number 6, we're going to talk about the business of building and rebuilding. Rebuilding is a beautiful thing because sometimes failure is a part of the process. And I made a $700 expensive mistake that I want to share with y'all. And lastly, episode 8, the live episode. I'm so excited, but that's going to be in progress. And as fast as that's going to be in progress where I'm at. And as fast as my life is moving always, I can't wait to see where I'll be at when I record that episode. So stay tuned for that. Each episode will give you a framework, tools, and resources to help you build your life, but also to see where this coach, me, is coming from. You'll be able to explore my story and find the lessons that I learned along the journey. You'll be able to watch as I co-author my own story, but you'll be in the audience being able to see every little piece. And I get to talk a little bit more in depth on here about what that looks like. This is reconstruction work, and I'm going to walk you through it step by step, just like I went through it, because we have to deliberately, selfishly grow. Before we wrap up today, I want to ask you a few questions, and I don't want you to rush past these. I really, really want you to let these land for you. Question 1 is, what's one cycle that you keep choosing even though it's killing you? Question 2, what excuses are you hiding behind? Question 3, what would your life look like if you stopped lying to yourself? And question 4, if you knew, like really, really knew that your setback was setting you up for a comeback, what would you do differently with your life right now? Sit with those, journal with those, and let them make you uncomfortable. Because where discomfort is where growth lives. Listen, I work with a small amount of high achieving women who are tired of being stuck, who are tired of not having it all together, but are ready to be in reconstruction and start rebuilding from where they are right now. If any of this resonates with you, I would love the opportunity to hear your story and understand why you spent so many years staying stuck in a cycle that you're ready to get out of, but haven't been able to take the steps forward. And it might not be that you didn't want to. It might just be that you don't know where to start from. You don't know where to go. And sometimes therapy isn't always the option. Therapy is a great standing point because it's a framework and a baseline of who you are as a person, but it doesn't push you where you need to go. Sometimes you need that one-to-one, that group activity, that homework assignment, that accountability partner. And sometimes you need that hard truth that's outside of the norm. And that is what I can cultivate for you. I have 15 spots that is going to be in the link below in the show notes for you to be able to join and work with me. I would love to be able to start transforming your life. Because again, together we can selfishly grow. Thank you so much for joining and watching and staying tuned this far into I Am My First Project. Again, I'm Nisha D, the host of this show, but also the founder of Selfishly Growing, the program that helps women. I am so excited for this journey, and if any of this resonated with you, like, comment, and share. Send it to your friends, and let's empower the world together. As always, continue to selfishly grow.